Hi everyone, this is Virginia Parsons, your Hangout mentor, and I'm here to help people reach new heights of success using Google Hangouts on Air so that they can gain more exposure, more authority, and social influence on the web. And we are starting a series today which I'm excited to share with you, and that series is about inspirational women. And I really am excited to bring this series to everyone because I think there's so many phenomenal women out there. I am so thrilled to be able to share experiences with them and let them share their experiences with you in a way that can inspire you and your business to reach new heights of success. So I'm really pleased and honored to have Linda Shaffer-Vanaria with us today, and she's going to talk about her amazing background in the Navy as a test pilot and how that background has really influenced so much of her life going forward as an executive coach. So thank you and welcome into the Hangout Live today. And if you are hanging out with us, I'd love to hear where you're hanging out from. So you can simply type that in the comment section below and just let us know where you're from, what your background is, a little bit about you. We'd love to know that. And also feel free to put any comments in the comment box or questions that you might have for Linda as we go forward. So let me introduce you to Linda today. Come on, Linda.
Hi, Virginia. Thank you so much for having me. It's just exciting to be here, and I love the topic that you're on. I love inspirational women, too. So.
Well, you're one of them. I really am just so excited to have you here with us. I'd like to give the audience a little bit of your background, and it's a phenomenal bio, and we'd be here all day if we went through your whole bio, but let's have a little background for people, and then I'm going to start to ask you a few questions.
That'd be great.
So here you've got, Linda, a 21-year Navy career as an officer and an aviator. And during that time, she was one of the first Navy test pilots, women test pilots. I think you said the third one, actually, Linda. Is that correct?
Yes, that's exactly right.
That's just so amazing. That right there, I think we can all stop for a minute and be inspired by the fact that she was the Navy's third female test pilot. And also the first woman to command a San Diego squadron. So that's phenomenal. Now, she's an executive coach today and a leading authority on edge performance. I'm going to have her explain just what edge performance is and how edge performance came out of her experience as a Navy test pilot. Now, she's been working over 10 years now in learning, development, and performance growth, working with literally thousands of leaders. You know, she's an international speaker, and she's also the author of Piloting Your Edge, which you can see here in the picture of her book. So I'll let her talk to you a little bit more about what inspired that creation of that book, and I think she's got another book in development as well. Today's topics are picked by Linda because these are things that inspire her that she wants to share with all of you viewers, and that is how to show up right now as ready as possible. She also wants to share with you what does it mean to perform at the edge. And finally, how do you shift from simply shooting from the hip to shooting from that all-important strategic hip? And so, Linda, I want to start with a little bit of your background going into the service. Can you tell me what initially inspired you to actually join the Navy?
Well, it's kind of a funny thing because it wasn't something that we really talked about in terms of that would be a great career in our family.
Hold on for a moment. We'll see if we can get Linda back. All right, we're going to have to see if she can get back online. We thought we had this all checked. You know, one of the things that I recommend is that you hardwire your computer, and when you hardwire your computer, it sometimes increases the speed. Linda's about to get a new setup that's going to enhance her speed way beyond even what I have, but we're going to give her a minute to get back on board, and when she joins us, she can finish telling us her story. Well, let me give you a little bit more background while we're waiting for her on, you know, what she's been doing as a result of her experience in the Navy itself. You know, she is a thought leader, an executive coach, an author, and a speaker, and she works internationally for some of the world's finest companies. She brings a diverse wealth of experience to her work. She was a U.S. Naval test pilot and one of the first women to command an operational squadron. Linda also has over a decade of experience in learning, development, and performance growth. And she is an entrepreneur and has worked with a wide group of business enterprises and leaders crossing corporate, nonprofit, government, and military. Now, her clients value her ability to impart her personal leadership experience and the vast wealth of knowledge that she has acquired from working with leaders from a broad spectrum of business and culture. Linda has an extensive experience working with leaders in operational arenas, helping them to innovate and evolve their mindset and best practices to engage the competing business and relationship priorities, ambiguities, and uncertainties to move with confidence into uncharted territory. I mean, it's just amazing what Linda's done and how she's taken her background and used it to just develop such inspirational business models. And one of the things that she did so effectively was to take her experience as a Navy test pilot and also a near-death experience when a plane crashed that inspired her to create business models around edge performance, edge and survival, challenges that we all face to one degree or another. I'm hoping Linda's going to get back on in a moment, and if she does not, we may have to reschedule this, but I'm just going to give you a little more background on it. Now, with the global financial crisis, these aspects of her work with leaders have increased in focus and significance as enablers to the bottom lines of efficiency, effectiveness, and brand. Linda's primary thought leadership focus is on decisive engagement. She authored the book, as I said a moment ago, Piloting Your Edge, which is about shaping a powerful mindset for creating edge outcomes, and is in work on her next book, The Art of Now. The vast majority of Linda's clients are focused on generating innovation, large-scale transformation, and championing best practice integration. And her clients describe her style as holistic, compassionate, story and example highlighted, and focused on the whole person and organization. She focuses in her coaching on growing the leader's approach to how they build awareness and supporting structures to generate essential results, and most significantly, to leverage strategic learning so their confidence to grow tactically and strategically is honed to continue their growth following coaching completion. And with that, you've got a big picture of what Linda's background and experience and how that's helped evolve into her coaching experience today. And if I add, as she comes back on, we've got her there again. As she comes back on, you can put your lower third back up, Linda. She is now the president and founder of Enterprise Coaching of Carlsbad, and that's Carlsbad, of course, California. So welcome back, Linda. Here she comes.
Not sure I'm ready to load the lower third, but
Okay.
Just want to say welcome back to everybody. We actually pushed an edge with overheat. And just like an aircraft would overheat, the computer did too, and it just shut right down. So, you know, sorry about that, but that's real life for us sometimes, and that's actually so metaphoric for how things hit us when they do. you know, when the edge is there, you're done and you're chopped. So, you know, fire away, Virginia. What's the topic to add on to what you were talking about while I was offline for a moment?
Well, what I really did, Linda, was to talk to people and read part of your bio. And that's what I said, you know, the bio is just so extensive. I'm just so inspired by the work that you've done, first in your naval career, but also going forward into how you've expanded that into inspiring other people to be able to perform on the edge. And as you say, not shoot from the hip, but shoot from a strategic hip. So I'd like to just start with your background. We started talking, we lost you when you talked about what inspired you in the first place to join the Navy and to make that, you know, your first career. And do you want to go into that a little more deeply?
Absolutely. My father was actually a navigator in B-17s in World War II and ended up being a prisoner of war. His aircraft got hit, and he bailed out of his aircraft and had the extremely unfortunate circumstance, which turned into a fortunate circumstance of being alive, but he had a streamer of a parachute, which is something we would never want to have happen to us. And he essentially free fell about 10,000 feet into Minerva Island. So that was one of the stories that was actually known in our family, and it inspired me in so many ways because he was able to look beyond, to be positive about things. He didn't say that you shouldn't take risks because things like that should happen, but you should be prepared. And so I went through life feeling like you really ought to be prepared, but not necessarily not take the risk. That aspect inspired me greatly. My mother was quite ill when I was younger. She was sick with things that they could never totally figure out, and was given essentially like a year to live when I was like 9 years old. And with that, it inspired me because she kept finding holistic things that would always help her find that one step forward. And so between my father surviving, my mother having had that situation with her health, I went into the discovery of aviation believing that you can turn up rocks and always find a way. You keep looking, there's always a way. There's the next holistic step. There's some procedure that you can shift or change or modify or move forward with. And with the realization that things can happen to you, but it's up to you how you trudge forward and make them work out. And so I was inspired by all the trinkets of those things in the attic that I kept discovering. Nobody talked about them a lot, but they sure spoke to me.
That's inspirational. I mean, just that I've never heard of such a story as what your father's was. And to have that wonderful pile of manure right there. Who could imagine that such a thing would save someone's life?
Well, it's actually so metaphoric for how we show up in life, in business, and all of our families and everything. There's always that thing that is going on that's kind of maybe not perfect. Maybe it has some things about it where you go, you know, this isn't really the way I'd want it to be. We might even use the expression, it stinks. It's just like manure. But the truth of the matter is, my dad would tell this kind of joke about how there's a pony in the manure pile. The little boy always, you know, going for the pitchfork with the manure and smiling because there's a pony in there. And it wasn't until I was an executive coach that I was thinking back after my father's passing about him telling that so many times that I realized that he became his own pony. He was the pony of his life. He was the gift. And as an executive coach, I feel like I'm there to help people find the pony in the pile that they're facing so that it becomes a real gift, a treasure, and inspiration to them. And we can do that so readily if we just have that pause, reflect, focus time. It's amazing where it can take us.
Well, I love that, and the idea also that you found your inspiration right there at home in your own family, your own parents to start with, who so often do form the foundation of our lives, you know, both good and bad, and in your case, challenges for them that led you to, you know, think and be uplifted and inspired to do amazing things in your own life. Now, so you're in the Navy, and let's talk a little bit about your background in the Navy. I mean, 21 years in the Navy, if I've got that correct.
Right.
I'm sure you just started out and then went in, became a test pilot, but that's not an overnight happening. Tell us a little bit about how that unfolded.
Well, I think actually starting from the process of joining the Navy, it was always in the back of my mind that I would like to be a pilot in the military. It was just something that called my name, and never believed it was possible. And so when I heard that they were actually taking a few women pilots, it was a 2-year process for me to actually go through all the wickets to actually get in. When people think, oh, you can just go sign up for the military, well, it's not so fast. And so it was understanding that you need to be aerodynamically adapted, that you need to be able to present yourself. I studied all kinds of things about aviation. I took private lessons and made sure that if I did go through the door, I'd be readily prepared to do all those things, read up and talk to people in the military. So I set that stage so that as soon as I could go through the door, knowing that there would be challenges. It was post-Vietnam. It was not a time that people were really happy about military people in general. But also, it was a time that women were not really a part of the military force, particularly not what I was doing. So I wanted to make sure that I was prepared and use that time wisely. And I think that was huge. And then going through the door, it was being kind of ready to learn, not just there to judge. And so I found myself going, how can I do this? What is possible? That continually saying to yourself, what is possible? How can I learn what is possible? Including things about understanding the junior officer's billet guide. It's like a 5-inch thick book. I went through every job in there to find out which ones I couldn't do because of the law, and then what was left. And that's how I've kind of plotted my career, finding options that could take things to the next level, things I would not have heard of otherwise. So it's that journey of really looking at where can I find the journey, where is the possibility in the journey, how could I get there, and then when I show up, how can I make sure I do a good job?
Well, just speaking from the standpoint of what is possible, and coming from that from a female perspective, it sounds like you really took on a lot just to prepare yourself for the possibility of entering the Navy and going into the aviation aspect of it. Talk a little bit more about, were there challenges? I'm sure there were, as a woman entering the Navy.
There was a huge amount of challenge out there. People would say, oh, you're pretty enough to not have to do that, and it was my passion, so I didn't want to hear that. I wanted to hear how I could go be an aviator and how I could really enjoy the whole pursuit of being in the tactical aspect of it, which I found fascinating and, moving. When you're doing something that you really enjoy doing and you want to do, you feel very alive while you're doing it. You feel on task and on purpose, and that was what I wanted to be able to do. And so it was about really not listening in many cases to all the negative things. Like when people would sit there and tell me all the negative things that, you won't be able to do this and you won't be able to do that. I just had a switch in my head, and I'm telling you, I just turned it off. I remember telling people, sometimes senior leaders, sometimes my own family in some cases, that there's not enough negative things that you could possibly tell me to make me not want to do this. So you might as well just save us both the frustration and not bring it up. and it is that whole place of deciding how you need to listen to things and filter things, and then not turn everything off, because you don't want to turn the pearls of advice out there off, because you need those to mentor you to go forward. And so it's this two-way thing of being open to every possible great idea that could be helpful, and at the same time turning off the negative spigot that seemed to flow in at twice the rate or 10 times the rate in a way that it didn't impact my attitude. Otherwise, it's stolen from you. Your dream is stolen from you just by this negativity.
Well, that's very powerful, and that's very inspirational by itself, because you obviously had a unique capacity that many, many people don't have, or at least have to practice, and that is shutting off the negative. In other words, having selective awareness and being open to ideas that inspire and move you in the direction that you wanted to go, and at the same time having the ability to close off your mind to negative feedback, negative ideas, or you can't do this, you can't be successful. I think those are really important points that you're making for anyone in business today or in life, so I really appreciate you sharing that. Let's take it a step further. What brought you into being a test pilot?
I, from day one, wanted to be a test pilot. From the day I walked through the door, it was on my mind. And at the time I walked into the Navy, there was all the stuff out there on the right stuff. There was, trips through museums. We used to go through museums when I was a child, and I would constantly see all these things from the past. I was very aware and inspired by Amelia Earhart and her passion to keep moving and keep trying things and never let go of the next possibility. And so that was just on my mind. What was not there was the pathway to get there. And so just starting with a pencil and paper, I sat down and I actually looked at like the years. People go, oh, you're so young, and I started calculating how many years it would take to go through the wickets, and I go, man, I'm like 6 months behind. I better start jogging and catching up. And it was that awareness of what the path might be consisting of that helped me understand some of the things that I could be focused on, what might help being able to get there, with the awareness in the back of my mind too that it may never happen, that I might actually be trotting down a road of no-go, no possibility. That didn't stop me, but I think it's important to go a journey that may be very difficult with that in mind. And what that did is it made me think about those things that if I didn't make it, how would this possibly prepare me for other things? What I found is it wasn't a perfect path. The journey had some hiccups in it, with opportunities that would shut down because the squadron would decommission, because things would happen in space and, with the space aircraft and all the destinations that you can go through being a test pilot, all those things. You can't change the news. But what I found is the skills that it took to become a test pilot are also the same skills that help you to become an even better commanding officer, to help you be a leader out there, actually to help you be an even better mom if you want to take it to the home, because your kids are always wanting to push the edge and do things. And it's like, how do you learn to balance those things, not to share autobiographical examples per se, but to understand where the parameters are, where it's okay or not okay. And so I think that's helped me from being a mom to being able to project into whether something's potentially successful, how to actually set the stage for communications up front so bad things don't happen. All of that were byproducts of being in that world and being on the journey. And for me, it's not just being on the journey, but I was so aware, because I knew I was unusual, that it wasn't an absolute outcome. It wasn't a normal path I was taking. I was so aware, and when you're aware, you can actually see the distinctions from step 1 to step 2 to step 3, and that's huge.
Yeah, awareness really says it all, because it helps, first of all, set the path that you decided to be on, and for you to understand that you were acquiring skills for future leadership, as you said, to be a mom. It was a win-win situation, even though it wasn't the perfect path and there were challenges to it. And speaking of challenges, you had a huge challenge which really helped you, move forward even further on your path, first in the Navy as a test pilot, and then, of course, on for Edge Performance. Can you tell us a little bit about that crash that you were lucky you survived?
Yeah, that crash came very early in my career. And a crash is not one of those milestones that you want to celebrate of like, yay, I'm glad that happened. I'm not glad it happened from that perspective, but what I will say is when you can harvest the learning from something like that, it makes you a better person, a better leader. It makes you be able to think. I think what it's done for me is it's really turned me into a thought leader on a topic that I probably would have never even dreamed of had that not happened. The whole concept of edge. I was in my A4. I was actually at the end of my jet training doing acrobatics. One of the leading edge slats deployed before the others, which actually sent the aircraft into an immediate departure, inverted spin, extremely violent. And you think about your work situation. We complain about our work situations all the time being, obnoxious and this and oh that. Well, that's that work situation where your head's getting bashed against the canopy. I'm plastered against the canopy. I'm being bashed from one side to the other canopy. I couldn't reach the flight controls. I was upside down, blood's running to my head, seeing stars, and at the same time, totally aware that I can't allow that to be annoying. I must focus on any realm of possibility of survival there, and the awareness of having to eject was very much with me, and so I actually initiated ejection, and that's where the real challenge started, was when the seat didn't leave the aircraft. It wasn't a fault with the aircraft so much as the fact that the way I was plastered against the canopy, I didn't get a direct vector pull on the handle, so I got a misfire off of that. What that taught me is, at that moment I was a new guy, and I was able to force myself to focus and to think of something that wasn't the usual procedure on the procedures that we knew based on comments that I'd read and advice I had received from a senior pilot in passing. All that came to me in that moment. By all shadows, I should have died that day. I was new. It was an experience that would challenge a senior leader or pilot in that experience to survive. And there I was, the new guy, and managed to focus and managed to survive the seemingly impossible. And when I started processing that, and I can tell you, if you're in the intensive care unit, you have plenty of time to process things. Staring at the ceiling and doing those little tasks of just reflecting on what happened, will I go back, all of that. And you go over it and over it, and it becomes part of how you think and who you are. When you have something like that happen to you, there's not a day that you don't really feel grateful that you survived, or reflect back on what did I learn and how does that apply to this moment. It's so much a part of who you are and what you think about. What I kept coming back to is this topic of edge and pushing the edge, and even knowing that you're at the edge. When somebody casually said to me, "Did you know you hit terminal velocity?" It's a concept that you study in aviation. It's when a refrigerator comes out of an aircraft and is going down. It was 10,000 feet to ground impact in less than 5 seconds. That's quick, and it goes by in a flash. And to think that you can actually apply yourself in that moment as a new guy is it just blew me away. And the concept of hitting terminal velocity, I was just like, nah, how's that possible? And at the same time, I was clocking it. We were there. And so we might not even be aware that we're at an edge, even though we know we're in a bad position, and all of that. And I became very fascinated, focused, and intently set on discovering, first of all, how did I survive, and could I bottle that to help others and myself and anybody I touch or reach for any reason? And additionally, how can you take it to the next level and keep it going? And it's become a lifelong journey for me to actually create the models and thinking processes to help people push the edges of their life. So.
I'm just in awe of everything you've just said. And one thing that really comes back to me on this, Linda, is that you're talking about such a short span of time. You must have gone into some form of an altered consciousness to even deal with the situation. But for you to immediately again begin to focus not on the negative, but focus on the possibilities, what are my options, and to execute what your options might be. And then when the execution doesn't go quite right, you still manage to survive. It's one of the most inspirational stories I have heard in a long, long time, and I really appreciate your sharing it. To me, it's where do we go from here? As you say, well, you've chosen to really focus your life on how to actually take that and carry it further, to expand and explore upon the circumstances you had and how it might help other people, and how it expanded your own life and your career. So I want to go into that in more detail. But I have a slide here before we go there, if you would mind. I'd love to have you talk about this, because when I saw all the different avenues of aircraft that you've been in, I was like blown away. Let's take a look at this, and can you talk for a moment about what I've put together here for you, a little bit of your test pilot background?
Well, I really applaud your ability to do research and to find all these machines. One of the things that we do in the test pilot world is you get a lot of different exposure to a lot of different types of aircraft that are out there. And the reason being is you want to take yourself out of that place of thinking that something is super fantastic and something else is not. You know, so often we learn something, we develop that soft spot for it, and part of what they're trying to train us is to thinking that, you know, it's great to have a soft spot for something, but you really want to have a soft spot for the best things out there, and a calibrated eye for where things can be a gotcha, and the ability to look at something that perhaps you haven't seen or flown before and go, wow, I bet that could do that, or maybe it could do this, and you create a mindset and some impressions around what might happen so that you can actually go into the aircraft then and start to experience it. And so these machines reflect what we got to fly and experience. The one in the down corner, on the bottom left corner, is the aircraft I ultimately got to command a squadron in. You know, I started my journey in jets, and then when the combat exclusion lifted for women, and I wanted to make sure that I had an opportunity at command, I went to be a department head, an executive officer, and a commanding officer in the logistics squadron for carry on board delivery mission. And so what I learned from applying myself to flying all these different aircraft is to appreciate every mission, what every aircraft can do, its unique qualities and attributes. And to me, they're each metaphors for how we approach different things in life, including the old warbirds. We got to fly some of the old warbirds, and when you fly them thinking about the modern day mission and what you have to do, it makes you think about things differently. And so all of these aircraft teach you something new, as every experience we have in life. So each one of them kind of has a special place in my heart, and also has taught me something really special. And I admire each of them, and the designers that put them together, and the people that maintain them, and the whole package that goes with it.
Well, it's amazing to me that you not again see all the possibilities for each individual aircraft and what its potential is. Let's take all these ideas and move them into some of the topics you really want to talk about today. And the first one is how to show up right now as ready as possible. You've certainly alluded to it, but let's expand upon that idea.
Yeah, it takes calibration. Now is just something we tend not to focus on. There's expression in aviation about really flying with the aircraft. If you're thinking too far ahead, then you miss what's going on now, and if you're flying behind the aircraft, you're not with the aircraft. It's different than just presence. You know, there's so much out there on being present, and I agree with that. But when you're focused with right now, you're ready for whatever, whenever, for whatever reason. And that's kind of the circumstance I found myself in going down in the aircraft. It's certainly the circumstances that pop up with odd challenges with health and those things that come up in your lives, you know, facing cancer, or perhaps an unexpected job change, all of those things. And how are you ready to perhaps have your mind there to make a decision differently, to think differently, all those things. A big one, just to give an example, so many of the leaders I've had the opportunity to coach are just overwhelmed. They're simply overwhelmed. Where do I start? Where do I begin? You know, if you think about an aircraft, there's so many dials and gauges and this and that, and there's wind and rain and everything else out there. So there's all the factors on the outside and the inside, and where do I start? And then incoming crisis, you know, something's happening, and how do I handle that on top of everything? And so it's just so symbolic of what happens in our life. And I just find simply just understanding, like in an aircraft term, where you fit relative to surge redline versus high tempo can help somebody calibrate themselves so they can get that 5 minutes to get their mindset and believe they're not stealing from the reality of what's possible to get done. And it just takes that little bit of work. And when you do that, you can actually start to apply yourself to thinking in different ways of how you want to frame a conversation, or when you bump somebody into a hall, in the hall, what you're going to say or sprinkle it with so that you're threading conversations and those things. And so all of that leads to, instead of just shooting from the hip, you know, you're shooting from a strategic hip that's really primed and ready to go. Like an aircraft, the old ones used to just pump the primer a little bit and put some fuel into it, and including some of the old cars. If people are fancy old cars, really old ones, they had these primer, but rarely do we prime ourselves or our capacity to shoot from the hip. It's different than just training. It's this whole ability to size up these different parameters with micro judgments that can help you be ready to make different decisions. And the number one thing that needs to be on people's abilities and minds is the ability to calibrate that. And that's what I find myself creating for people, is just a series of calibrations with a couple models that help them understand how they apply those.
Oh, that's fabulous. How do you teach this model? Well, let's talk a little bit more about the EDGE model, first of all, and then how you help other people implement it in their lives and careers.
A model can be fancy or non-fancy. My whole approach to a model is something that can help you understand a concept that would be so difficult otherwise that you can't even grab onto it. And this whole thing around EDGE, you know, when you first start talking about EDGE, you go, well, what's EDGE? That's the first thing people say. And the whole thing is, EDGE is a moving target. You know, what I defined in my first book, Piloting Your EDGE, is that, you know, it's like the universe. The universe is expanding. You can either go with it or go with it. You can go with it under your own terms, or you can go with it under the terms of the universe where you're actually falling behind, but you're along for the ride. And so this is about framing the choice from which how you're going to stand with the universe of choices that are out there. And you need a model to help you understand where you are. It's very much like going into a mall. If you don't know what store you're looking for, you can go crazy. But if you can go up to the map because you are here, that's a big help. You still might have to be looking at the signs and those things going around, but you're far more likely to get there sooner and in better shape or condition and ready to go and get what you need if you have that starting point. And so the models, everything from going, how do I work 4 or 5 mindsets together, which I call mindset formations, and now I call it shape-shifting mindsets. That's how it'll show up in my next book, Art of Now, because it emerged to me from aviation, but I really don't want, I'm not here to teach people how to fly. I hope they'll appreciate flying and respect the pilots that are doing that, but I really want people to take those concepts and have them live and breathe in whatever world they're in. And so now it's a shape-shifting mindset approach so that you can actually feel and see the positions and feel seamless. Most of us feel like, I'm going to put on this hat. Now I'm going to put on my mom hat. Now I'm going to put on this hat. Well, I think all the hats need to be ready to change positions and guide the other one in a nanosecond. And so my models help people do that and feel whole every moment of the day and be able to change on the dime when they want to have a new circumstance without feeling like they're dropping half of who they are. They just reprioritize and understand how it fits and how they speak together. And a giant business perspective. There's so much out there now on global leadership and business, and then there's the business of regional aspects and international, and my mind models work for that too, about really helping people stay holistic and honoring all of it at one time and realizing that they can have respect off of that. So it can work with the big and it can work with the small. So that's one aspect of the model, and how you bring philosophy into that to structure it so you can actually show up and feel at home and real. A little philosophy is actually the part that helps you understand the things that are in tension and have some thoughts and guides on how to do that. So that's a piece of it. And the blueprinting instinct piece, there's some aspects of really understanding, what lifts you up. We talked about the positive versus what drags you down, and so that's all about like having some calibrating factors.
Oh, that's amazing. I love your term, shape-shifting mindset. That's fabulous. Now, I guess as someone who can often feel overwhelmed and do put on many, many hats, I'd just be interested if you have any even simple little exercise or shape-shifting mindship tool that I could pick up, just from our interview today and apply toward my life in a way that keeps me performing on the edge.
Absolutely. If you think about the different mindsets that you're flying from, give each of them like a yellow sticky or a zapper, or in this case maybe a pink zapper. Write them down, and most people have seen a movie with planes flying in formation, and think about how they need to work together. And what's the story of that flight formation? Do they need to fly apart or separately? And then go, what does that invite me to do in terms of my behavior or habits? What do I need to let go of? Maybe a little. What thought do I need to have on my mind or head? And then it can feel natural to you. You don't feel like you're letting go of something or storing something in the drawer. I don't like that concept, because then you're not ready to grab onto it. Then you can actually shift the positions of them and go, how does that invite me to think differently if this one's in charge and these two are kind of hanging on? You'll find that your behavior are slightly different, and you'll develop a different position of understanding how to subordinate something to it without feeling like you're not treating it with respect. Respect isn't you do something all the time. Respect is when it has its rightful position in kind of like the flow of life, and so you need to be kind of like flying in a formation with all these things through the flow of life.
Oh, that's beautiful terminology, flying in a formation. And funny that you said the sticky notes, because I've been working with them the whole time here.
Then you're ready to go.
I'm ready to go at that point.
You have more than one thing on your sticky note. I wouldn't suggest that, because that's going to make it very complicated. Do I put it here or here?
Yeah, well, let me show you. I started with the for me from you today. What is possible?
Great.
And then your idea of being open to, gotta go the right way, open to ideas. Even though you were learning how to focus on the positives and letting go of, giving no attention to the negatives, you are always open to new ideas. I loved that. You are inspired always by others, starting with your family, and then all the way up to Amelia Earhart and getting yourself...
and including people I don't like. I've always chose to be inspired by people I don't like in the ways that they're worth being inspired by. And we don't often do that. We often discard them. And I go, well, not everything about them is worthy of being discarded. So I honor everybody.
That's phenomenal as well. And the last thing I'm going to put in is, I think, one of the most important, and that is, what is possible? Taking from every circumstance and seeing what is possible is, to me, one of the most inspiring things you've said, and you've said so many. We just have a wealth of inspired thought coming from you today, and I really appreciate taking this time with you. I think that people would want to learn more about what you're doing. I know your new website is in almost completion, but can you tell people where they can get more information, and maybe where they can read your most recent blog about your father's 10,000-foot fall into the manure pile, and how that move forward into affecting your life and your career?
Well, that's going to be my first blog, actually going onto the website. And what is going to be the giveaway on that coming up, hopefully I get this launched next month, is a brochure that I've created, like a mini book called 2.5 Seconds to Live, A Leader's Guide. Really would love to give that to everybody who could be inspired by it. But since I don't have that to give to them now, what I'd like to do is for the first 5 people that email me, I would love to give them a copy of my previous book, Piloting Your Edge, which is an aspect of the different consolidated ideas. It's in a raw form, and it could help them take their lives to the next level. So if they'd like to have that, it would be my pleasure for the first 5. Send me their address, and I will mail it to them.
All right, let me put that down since your lower third is not up right now. So it's email Linda at, and what is the email address?
At enterprisecoaching@roadrunner.com, or they can find me on LinkedIn.
Okay, let me just get this typed in. Enterprise Coaching
@roadrunner.com.
Okay, at Roadrunner. Oh, if I would not put spaces in, it would help. Okay, or on LinkedIn.
Great.
And what is your address there? Just under your name?
My name,
Okay. All right.
My name, I will pop right up, and it'd be my pleasure to be connected with them. But the first 5 that like a copy of my previous book, which is, I always love folks' first books because that shows the raw thinking that gets the later concepts started.
Okay, I'm just going to put here that you're giving away 5 copies.
Yep.
And give me the name of your book one more time so I can type it in here.
Piloting Your Edge.
Piloting Your Edge. Wonderful. So I'm going to share that right now. So they've got that access. And let's do some final thoughts and words on what this inspiring interview has meant. I want to start with you, Linda, and just say for you, what if you could summarize, and I know that's not an easy thing to do, but if you could summarize your life and what it means to live on the edge and to use the inspiration of, shape-shifting mindset in, 1 or 2 words, how would you sum that up?
How about a phrase or a sentence or 2? It's the whole concept of what I focus on in edge performance. And what that means is to actually stand at the edges that you know or can imagine and use that as the viewing point for possibility and not think about that as the possibility. We always think about edge as the edge instead of our viewing point. And so all possibility in its greatest form comes from the outer limits of where we can stand and pop ourselves. And I'd really like people to plant themselves there more than they have ever before.
That's great. I already have an image for that. So it's not about being at the edge, it's standing at the edge looking for possibilities as a viewing point for possibilities beyond what you might not see if you weren't at the edge. Is that part of it?
And the whole concept of being a test pilot is to actually learn not where the edge is, you discovered that, but you really want to set the stage so people can fly up to just before the edge. And so all of that is not about pushing ourselves recklessly, but to go to the outer possibility of as far as we can go in an almost reasonable way. And then keep viewing further so we can keep stretching that reasonable place of where we can go out. And that just takes work and practice and some mindsets and some tools.
It's wonderful. I'm going to stop with that last phrase in itself and summarize this all up in one word, and that is stretch. Mm-hmm. I hope that what we've done today is provide a platform and inspiration for all viewers to stretch and to have a whole different perspective when you bring yourself up to the edge where you can see further and develop greater possibilities because you've taken yourself to that point. And Linda, I just want to thank you so much for being here with us today and sharing your amazing story, your inspiration, and your expertise with our viewers. And again, Linda is providing, giving away 5 copies of her book, Piloting Your Edge, and you can receive that by emailing her at enterprisecoaching@roadrunner.com.
And send a mailing address.
I'm sorry?
Send their mailing address.
Oh, yeah. Sure, you put your email address in, and also your mailing address, so she can send that book to you. And you can also reach her on LinkedIn at Linda Shaffer-Vanaria. And so once again, thank you everyone for attending today, and thank you very, very much, Linda, for being our first interviewee on the Inspirational Businesswoman series. I'm so grateful and appreciative. I'm going to sign off now. Thanks again. Bye now.
Thanks for having me.